Hello, my name is Robin Kay, and I'm a professor in the Faculty of Education at UOIT in Oshawa, Ontario, Canada. And I'm going to be talking to you about comparing a flipped, active, and lecture-based teaching approach in higher education. Quick overview, I'm going to discuss some background literature and information, go over the purpose, review the method, discuss the results, and talk about future research. So here are the three methods that we looked at: the flipped classroom, lecture-based classroom, and active learning-based classroom. And we reviewed the literature just to see the benefits of each. A flipped classroom, which typically involves sending students home to review videos, short videos or longer videos about content, and then coming into class to either work on problem sets or case studies or some sort of active class where the teacher and the students are working together and the teacher can coach the students. Specific benefits of that approach include constructing meaning, uncovering misconceptions, increasing engagement and motivation, improving student teacher and peer interactions, and accommodating different learning preferences. Benefits of a lecture-based approach have been its effective and efficient way of transmitting large amounts of information and providing some interaction with the students through class discussion. An active learning based classroom is where students work in small groups to address specific problems, or it could be case studies, or it could be a number of activities where students are required to work together. And typically, this promotes higher level problem solving skills, reflection, and student centered and controlled activities. So, the purpose of the following study was to examine and compare flipped, lecture based, and active collaborative based approaches to teaching programming at the community college level. Now, what's new about this is the actual comparison of flipped, lecture based, and active collaboration, all three. You can see the comparison of flipped and lecture based. You rarely see the comparison of flipped and active learning. So it's looking at these three approaches and seeing, are there differences? The other new thing about this is focusing on college students. Flipped classrooms have been looked at the university level, but not at community college. So 103 college students participated, all males, 18 to 24 years old, within a suburban population of about 680,000 people. The method of data collection was survey-based, focusing on a community of inquiry model where we looked at social presence, cognitive presence, and teaching presence. Social presence refers to the degree to which learners progressively identify with the larger group, the degree to which they communicate with purpose, and develop interpersonal relationships in the learning environment. Cognitive presence is the extent to which learners are able to construct meaning and confirm understanding through rigorous reflection and discourse. So the focus is the cognitions or the learning. And teaching presence refers to the extent to which a purposeful design uh, is created to direct cognitive and social processes towards meaningful learning objectives. So, the extent to which the teacher can help promote social presence and cognitive presence and increase learning. So, those three were looked at with an attitude scale and open ended questions. And as well, learning performance was looked at for all three teaching approaches: the flipped, the lecture, and the active approach. So, what do each of these look like? Well, the lecture-based approach was an in-class lecture and then individual lab project homework was a typical routine there. The flipped classroom, on the other hand, was online video homework. So that's where they got their knowledge and understanding of concepts. And then within class, small group in class lab projects that they worked together. Now, the active collaborative approach was in class, hands on, segmented activities with peer support. So the teacher would provide an activity, the students would work on it, and then would get feedback from the teacher, and then they'd move on to another activity. And then the homework was small group lab project activities. Data collection worked like this. There were actually 2 rounds for each teaching strategy. So there was the lecture-based strategy, the active, and then the flipped, and then lecture-based, active, and flipped, all with different topics, of course. And after each 2-week session, uh, there was a post-unit survey and a quiz. So looking at the results and social presence, active and flipped classrooms did not differ. They were approximately the same. However, a Tukey's t-test revealed that the active collaborative approach was significantly different than the lecture-based approach. All right, significantly higher. So there was more social presence in the active collaborative teaching approach class compared to the lecture-based approach. That's probably not surprising given that there wasn't much social interaction in the lecture-based approach. In terms of cognitive presence or engagement, there is no significant difference among the lecture, active, and flipped classroom approaches. And in terms of teacher presence, the active collaborative approach did not differ from the flipped classroom approach, but it did differ significantly from the lecture-based approach. So teacher presence was higher in the active collaborative approach, or rated higher compared to the lecture-based approach. And this is based on Likert scales that were developed to assess each of the presences. In terms of learning performance, post quizzes did not differ significantly among the lecture, active, and flipped classroom teaching strategies. So what do we have? We have the active approach seems to be sort of the winner, the better approach. Perhaps not, but teaching presence was significantly higher than the lecture-based approach. And then when we look at social presence, active and flipped learning were uh, high compared to the lecture-based approach. However, in terms of cognitive presence, there was no significant difference. And in terms of learning performance, there was no significant difference. So what's going on here? They don't seem to differ that much from each other. Well, in terms of learning performance, one of the issues was the actual quiz, which focused on basic knowledge. And the active approach and the flipped approach focused on the application of knowledge. So there was an oversight there in looking at just the knowledge in a multiple choice quiz, and one would expect that the basic knowledge wouldn't differ that much. Now, if we focused on application knowledge, that might be different. So that's something to look at in terms of future research. The other issue might be content. It's a little bit different maybe than a university setting, depending on the subject area. But typically in community college, you might have more practical hands-on knowledge, particularly with computer programming, which is suited to sort of segmented teacher-guided activities. It's well suited to the active learning approach, where a little bit is given, the students work on it, and then a little bit more is given. With the flipped classroom approach, and it's quite interesting here, students would watch videos, and then in class they would work on one activity as a group. And perhaps that in-class activity isn't the best approach. Perhaps the video segments plus the more active segmented approach might even work better. It's possible. And for basic knowledge, the lecture approach may be quite sufficient. So for future research, we would want more precise learning performance measures that ferret out basic knowledge from application knowledge or higher order learning concepts. I think we would also want interview and focus group data to understand why students might feel differently about these different strategies. And lastly, I think a focus on pedagogy is important here. That's what we're doing in this study, but we want to take a look at, for example, videos and the type of videos, which ones are students more inclined to watch, and also their attitudes towards watching videos. Uh, that has to be focused on a little bit more to understand the flipped classroom and its impact on students. If you have any questions, feel free to email me and I'll be happy to respond.